Hi there. Thank you for downloading, listening to, and watching the Lean Into Artcast. This is a show where a couple of visual storytellers get together and take on various topics that tend to cross one's path when you go on this adventure of communicating with images. We think hard about this stuff, so you will too. My name is Jerzy Drost. I'm a cartoonist and teaching artist, and the other host is named...
Hello, I am Rob Stenzinger. I am a user experience designer. I make interactive things, and I coach and teach about that stuff as well.
So we both do work where the explicit activity is helping other people, teaching and coaching.
Yeah.
Right. So we do a thing where the contractual agreement is that we show up to help guide somebody to achieve their best at something. In other words, we're committed to this idea of service, right?
Yeah, I think that fits. That sounds a lot like our topic today.
I was trying to drive there. I mean, it takes like a lot of mental acrobatics to get us to that, because that has been a sort of a theme of this series, this podcast for like a long time now. This idea of like service-driven design.
Sometimes we contrast that with service versus expression, or it's the idea of like what is important, what are you including in the definition of like what you make, and like what makes it feel successful for you, or what have you. Because when we talk about making all kinds of art, and sometimes the point is just the artist's point of view, like imbued within a thing, and that gets shared. But pretty soon it's really easy to go from, you're making a thing, but you're not alone. There's some way where that gets connected to the world, and there's some way where, how do people become aware of it? How do you provide it to them? And what's it like where they, do you connect with them ever again? That kind of thing. All of a sudden you're thinking like the service of what you do is because you want to keep doing this thing, and you probably really believe in it. And, maybe more than just the mechanics of the art and the expression, but maybe some like teaching, right? So what are you thinking here as far as service-driven design?
Well,
better.
Yeah, service-driven. Well, I have an example of something, a project I'm working on right now. As a matter of fact, it's not done, but it's underway, where the project morphed because of different kinds of frictions that naturally happen when you start working within groups. And when I say frictions, I don't want to place any value judgment on this. It's just frictions happen because different needs start coming into the mix when you start working with a group. And the solution revealed itself through service-driven thinking and application of design. And so I thought what we do this episode is explore the project that I'm thinking of, and then maybe unpack a little bit about, what do we mean by service-driven design, using this as a case study. What do you think?
I like it. I mean, yeah, I can't wait to get into this. It's there's the we've got a couple of ways of looking at it. So it'll be the kind of like what we do. This is actually one of the topics that actually fits our typical primary model, where we talk about things practically and on the ground, and then we talk about them from more examining in theory, right? So the difference between practice and theory. And this is cool. We haven't had a topic fit that exactly for a number of weeks.
Yeah, that's true. In the teaching world, this is what we would call like the activity and then the reflection on the activity. So with that, I'll hit the music so that we can get into... there we are. Okay, so the music signals that we are fully into the topic of the episode. So, okay, let me pull up the example in question that I'm talking about, because we actually talked about this a while back on Lean Into Art. It was actually episode 163, Rapid Iterative Collaboration with Jesse Kaufman. That was in 2016, Rob.
Time flies. I know it comes up sometimes because the Captain Seriously project is like a really good touch point. It's it's a project that you can talk about publicly, which is nice, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty great. And not like sort of out of school or whatnot. There's a way where I wish we all could do this way more. So that's a fun aspect, like just a side note about this modeling and exploration. It is a great thing to work on projects that you can talk about, because others get to learn from it too. And that's
I was listening to an interview with Lisa Congdon, and she said this thing that I'm still puzzling on it, but she said this idea of transparency has like an inherent anti-capitalism to it, because it's, instead of hoarding resources and leveraging them, you're openly distributing them with a sense of abundance, right? And I like that idea. It definitely like harmonizes with my ethic of like, well, we all do better if we're more transparent. And if information is more free and more accessible, we all do better. And there's little to be gained by me hiding what I know from other people. And I'm not very interested in somebody thinking that I'm a wizard on any particular topic. This is hard-won skill acquisition, and I like watching other people acquire skill too. Anyway, and so yes,
by the way, if why not be a wizard, but why be a solo wizard? Jam with a bunch of wizards, all wizarding their butts off at their greatest capacity, so they're all learning from one another.
Actually, yeah, this is something
favorite.
I talked about in my Art Sound Off series this year. Was one of the benefits of teaching is when your students grow up or get more skilled, because let's say you're teaching adults who are beginners, as they get more skilled and they go on their path, they'll often come back and reciprocate by showing you some of the secrets that they've discovered on their journey, which is like a level up for you. And yes, so like jamming with wizards is not just fun, but it's also mutually beneficial in that like you can get better wizard powers too. So yeah, right. I guess I should say maybe not wizard, maybe magician, like the magician who hides how the trick actually happens. Like I'm not interested in that kind of dynamic when it comes to my work. I don't see the utility of it, but I definitely see the utility of sharing something openly. So that's all to say that this project is like so incredibly wholesome in so many ways for me. It just like it's so harmonious with my how I think about comics, how I think about teaching, how I think about art, how I think about projects that are like meant to make contact with the community in a positive way. So very quickly, the Captain Seriously project is a project where I've been commissioned by an advocacy group called Seriously Chelsea, which is sort of like a pro-social organization that its explicit purpose is to help kids make better choices in certain communities in Southeast Michigan. And they hired me, and get this, Rob, it's been almost a decade now. It was almost a decade ago that they hired me to start this series of comic books where every year I make a new comic book for a specific grade level. And this is another wholesome aspect to it, is that I actually meet with the school faculty where the books are given away. All the kids in the school district get the book for free. I get full creative control to an extent in that they are relying on my expertise as a comic book artist, but I meet with them to meet with the faculty and with Seriously to talk about, okay, what kind of topics do we want these stories to explore? What kind of themes do we want to explore? And the themes are chosen based on what that grade is experiencing in their particular community, right? So the second grade book, when I met with them, that was the first one I did almost 10 years ago. And they said, like, we're having a real problem on making kids understand the danger of germs and why hand washing is important, right? So can you do a story around that? And that's what the first book is about. It's about like this evil villain, Professor Von Snotbottom, who has a germ ray, and he makes one of the heroes sick. And when he gets sick, he gets cranky, and he's very powerful. So a very powerful, cranky person is a difficult thing to deal with, and in the end, he learns to wash his hands, before and after, and that kind of thing. Anyway, so it's like that. And then the stories progressively get more complex and mature as you get up to middle school, and the books have gone all the way up to 10th grade. They Seriously has actually put the books on their website, which I've got up on the screen. You can actually read them.
That's fantastic.
So talk about transparency, right? It's like not only am I free to talk about this project, but like they make it available to the general public. And here's pictures of like the assemblies where I actually go and give the books to like all the kids in the schools. And then to make it even more wholesome, they hired me to lead comics workshops where these kids get together for 8 weeks and they write new editions of the series with their own characters. So there's 5 of those now, these anthologies. And then the kids all do signings at the school during a pizza party. And then, there they are all signing books together at the school. So it's just such a wonderful and like holistic and wholesome project that I'm really grateful for.
Really, yeah. Like you've got the sort of the comic aspect of it that is so inclusive and also creative and meant to inspire, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's participatory as well. It's wild. Like, what a cool project.
Yeah,
getting more communities to do that kind of work. It's I imagine it's easier to spread because we can talk about everyone can talk about it. That's so awesome.
And yeah, nothing would make me happier than if other communities did this. If other community, advocacy groups followed the model and did this kind of thing, because it's good for comics, it's good for kids. It reaches kids in rural areas who don't necessarily have a lot of access to arts programming. And it's a great signal to them. This is something that came from Seriously themselves. Like, this is a signal that we care about you. We care about you as people, and we want to help you however we can. And the comic book is just one piece of a larger sort of advocacy that they do, where they have lots of like student-driven organizations within the organization. So I'll put that aside because I can't speak to that directly. I don't have much involvement in that. But anyway, so it's a project I believe in. It's a project that I've gotten a lot of value from. And they want me to finish off the grade levels. I've done 2nd through 10th. And they're like, okay, let's go back and do 1st grade now. And so that started a discussion of like, okay, well, what are our expectations for a 1st grade book? What is the school's expectation and needs? Like, what desires and what needs need to be filled for this thing? I have my assumptions about what a 1st grader needs, but let's not just work off of my assumptions. Let's work off of the observations of the people who actually make contact with the kids who are going to be getting these books, right? And so some discussions happened, and they kind of came back to me and they said, well, we've got some themes. I don't remember the full boat of themes that they gave me, but they gave me like a number of themes that I could possibly work with that were all suggested by teachers. But then they said, the 2nd grade book, I should back up. The 2nd grade book was a coloring book. And I forget the exact reason why. It was a coloring book, comic book. It's a comic book that you can color. I seem to think that maybe something had to do with like early budgets. I'm not sure. I don't recall. I didn't write this down. But in any case, I like the idea of making a coloring book for 2nd graders because they had that extra level of interactivity. This is a book that was written for you that you are not just meant to read and put away. You're going to spend some time with it. You're going to color it too, right? And 2nd graders love to color, generally speaking. I did. So the question came up, like people said, well, maybe the 1st grade book should be in color because a lot of the media that these kids are consuming is in full color. The comic books that they're reading are in full color. A lot of youth comics are in full color instead of black and white. Maybe we should do this one color. And then the question came up like, well, but then it's not going to, why they're going to be confused when they get the 2nd grade book and it's a coloring book. Why was the 1st grade book simply a story to read they don't interact with? 2nd grade book, coloring book. And the question came to me, and they said, well, can you do a book that's half color, half black and white? Does that work? How does that work, Jerzy? And I was like, I don't know, but let me think about it. So here's, I've got these 2 constituencies with 2 different needs, half say black and white, half say color. So I gave myself a couple days of breathing room, and I accessed some teaching materials that I have from some recent professional development that I went through about early childhood development. And I said, okay, well, what are sort of benchmarks of development from a teacher's perspective that kindergartners and 1st graders are going through? And there was a number of things that I read about. Some was showing more responsibility and wanting adult acknowledgement for showing more responsibility. Look, I did it all by myself. Look, I helped my fellow student do it. There was something about like becoming a bigger kid, like that notion of like, I'm becoming bigger. I'm noticing that there's a kid in a lower grade than me. That was part of the development thing that this rubric I was reading was showing me. And then it got to this part about management of emotions, right? Like this idea that in this grade, this, generally speaking, something that they're wrestling with is how to understand how to manage their feelings. And then I thought, oh my gosh, this is what Mr. Rogers is always about. Is it's like, what do you do when you're angry? What do you do when you're sad? What do you do with that feeling? Like, how do you engage with it so that it's not just working on you, but you're like in conversation with it and you recognize it as a part of you, but it's not all of you, right? Abstract idea for a 7-year-old, 6-year-old, right? But it's something that we can probably wrap our brains around in an image, right? And this is my specialty as a cartoonist. So I came back to them and I said, and I put together 3 pitches from all these different like approaches of like different kinds of like developmental thresholds. Like, okay, here's one about being a big kid. Here's one about being more responsible. And then the third one, or the first one actually I put in the list because I was the most excited about this one. I said, what if we did a story where the villains have a feelings stealer of some sort? It's a magical evil weapon, right? And it can take your feelings away. And we'll start off by showing that there's some characters in the group who have big feelings and they don't know what to do with it. They throw tantrums, right? Now the villains show up and they suck all the feelings out. When they suck the feelings out, it sucks the color out too as a way to indicate the feelings getting sucked away. Now, I'm going to throw in, that isn't the most original idea in the world. Rainbow Bright was essentially the same idea, right? There was an episode of the Powerpuff Girls, which was essentially this idea. There was like the evil mime character who sucked the color out of the world and everybody's feelings drained with the color. And that's to say that I think that this is an image we can all instantly connect with and relate to, is this idea that color corresponds very directly to emotion. We all feel it, right? So the villains steal the color out of the characters halfway through the book. Now it becomes a black and white book. And then our hero, one of our heroes, turns to the reader and says, you got to help us solve this problem. Could you color in Turnbuckle Tootweiler so he looks angry, so he wants to fight? Can you color in Captain Seriously so he looks courageous and brave? Can you color Captain Yarley so she looks clever and comes up with a plan? And so on. And as the kids color in the characters, like, thanks, now I got what I need. And they go and they scare off the bad guys, because bad guys, or I should say villains, hate a fair fight, and they usually turn tail and run when the odds are even. So we started out with this idea of like, okay, you're going to do this book and it's going to be about like civic engagement. It's going to be about responsibility. It's going to have a fun adventure in it. And now it turned into this really kind of rich product where it's asking the students to engage with the story and think about the ideas within the story in a very active and meaningful way, right? And when we were done, we all, like, we're not done because I'm still working on it, but once we all agreed on that was the project, all of us looked at it and said, like, this is better than what it would have been if we just went off of our early assumptions, right? This idea of incorporating and accepting the frictions as a means to inspire more creativity and thinking about what the reader needs in that scenario developed a better product, right? All out of the sense of service.
There's a lot of layers of service too in that whole story. First, what an awesome project. Overall, like the foundation you're standing on, but then like this iteration, this new project in that whole, what do you call it? It's like a whole series of projects, right? Every comic, it's another. They are products for separate audiences, or growing, changing, different specific audiences, and like that. Like you've got the service of creating that product, right? The service of making the project happen, and then the overall mission and whatnot too, and then to deliver something that included all that different perspective and need. My only question that I have as far as like how that project went, because it seems so dang awesome, so self-evidently, like there's a mentioned in the chat by Sketchboy. I dig that coloring activity, like the Peter Pan clap if you believe in fairies to save Tinkerbell.
Yeah.
What a cool observation. Yeah, you've created something really interactive and in such an integrated way. And the idea of service is just, we'll get more into that in the second half, but it's just so imbued in every layer of what you're describing. Because even that organization, you got the service of the project and how you help them navigate that, but you've got this general mission of combining using comics to help, and then let's see, represented by actual, delivering comics to kids, but then also other learning experiences too, where, the teaching and the workshops, and what an, anyway, how in the world
I know. Yeah.
can you just make this happen over and over?
No, that's exactly right. It's like, I never want this project to end, right? I want it to go on indefinitely, and I want it to be happening everywhere, because everything about it just it feels like it's hitting all of my mission buttons. And to Chris's point, Sketchy Boy, this idea was also based on observation that I've had with young children, is that you'll notice that a lot of television for that age group, Blue's Clues, Daniel Tiger, they're addressing Mr. Rogers. They're addressing the child directly, which, older adults who think that they have discovered patterns and therefore are wise make fun of that. That's a silly thing to do, except that I've watched a first grader watch one of those shows, and I remember the moment when the character turned to the kid and said, the kid watching, and said, can you help us find this? And I watched this little 7-year-old go, uh-huh. I was like, yeah, they're involved. They don't, it's okay, and it's natural, and I would even argue that it's good that they can't separate, that they can get that involved in the story, providing
some kids are in on the bit and it doesn't matter, right? That's the other layer of this too.
That's right.
It still works.
Yeah.
Because it's a moment of, can you feel harder right now with me in this story? And no matter what, a kid will be like, yes, I'm there and it's real, or yes, I'm there because this is freaking awesome. I'm in this. I'm here for it. Either way, it still works.
So this
quick question though. Yeah. Speaking of it works. Did you incorporate a test in there? Did you test that out? I mean, I know you had tons of research and evidence and all that kind of stuff. This is thinking of a UX thing. So you had this hypothesis, and or maybe it wasn't needed on the project, right? But
you mean test this in
kind of prototype and see how this kind of thing worked functionally for this project?
Sadly, no. Only in that the development time on this is so rapid. This is one where it's we got to get this out by the end of the year, so we don't have time to prototype it. However, we did have applied research in that we had 7 years of delivering the second grade book to schools. And the moment we say it's a coloring book, that's a comic that was made for you, there is an audible gasp that goes across the room as the kids open the books, oh my gosh, this is something I get to work, do something with. And I put 2 pages of games in the back, and it's word search, finish the drawing, spot the one that's different. And the kids, vocalize very enthusiastically about that. There's games, it's okay.
So it's, I mean, this is information. It's just interesting to point this out, because one of the things, the bigger opportunity, finding that service connection with someone with such a strong common ground and mission, it's possible and doable, but that's harder. But then the how you go about it stuff is where this can be repeated. Because I asked the question, I didn't expect to have an answer, but more or less I'm looking back and realizing how can you do this, over and over, all over the place. So the part that is more easily repeatable is what you're describing is how you bring about the project. And you have had this long track record, almost a decade, of involving the audience. It's just this particular thing. I'm not trying to poke a hole in your project, right?
No, I didn't read it that way.
If this were the first iteration, a good idea would be to say, all right, we feel super confident. We feel we've made some credible choices in this design. You know what? Let's make sure we're on the right path, because we're about to commit more resources and what have you. And
and to the credit,
we've already done that.
To the credit of Seriously, that was something we were doing with each book drop. Every time we visited the school, we would have a reflection period where we talk about what the kids reacted to and how that would change the next one. So in both good and bad, right? So on the one hand, we wound up getting students who grew up with the book who became kind of invested in it. I wouldn't say invested in it they were huge fans, but they knew that this was a part of their lives for a long time, and they believed in it to the extent that they got the sense that we weren't there to sell them a bill of goods. This wasn't us giving them a free thing to market Adidas shoes to them. This was something that was like intentionally made to help them. And so we got a middle schooler, or rather a high schooler, I should say, who became a beta reader for us and like actually looked at my early drafts and gave me feedback to help me bring a more authentic voice to the grade levels that I was reaching. So we had that, which was awesome. We also wound up changing the project based on reactions we got in the rooms when we did the 7th grade book, which is very similar to the 6th grade book. But like we watched these 7th graders read this 12-page story and just go, okay, I'm done. And they threw it over their shoulder. And like we literally found copies on the ground at some schools. And like, okay, something about that wasn't connecting. What did we hear them say? Right. And that was when we had like a huddle and we said, like, I think the next book needs to be longer. And I think it needs to be a more intense and involved story. I think they were expecting something with more meat on it than what they got. And so that the next year, the 8th grade book was black and white. It was post-apocalyptic. It was gritty. It was like Hunger Games, and it was 40 pages. and when Jesse and I, when Jesse was the coalition director, we'd go to the schools and we're like, yeah, every year we give you this book, and it's about your community and heroes in your community, and like even some students appear in the book from time to time. So, but we just decided to blow up Chelsea. We blew up Chelsea, Michigan. Everything's destroyed now, and you hear the mood change in the room. It's like, oh wait, now this is getting transgressive. I'm in 8th grade. Yeah. I think horror movies are suddenly way more interesting than I did when I was in 3rd grade. And so once again, we won their trust and brought them back to the book. So,
gosh, wow.
there was a lot of
so
like
awesome, like that kind of involvement and like to be working with someone who sponsors something and believes in it in such a way that knows that for it to become, it has to be discovered what it needs to become. Yeah. And that is embodying a service.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah, it's
something you're describing too. There's this the evolution of the audience. There's a book. I think it's an interesting book. It's worth a skim or exploration. Everything Bad is Good for You. And part of the idea is how we can characterize, playing games is bad for you. Oh, watching TV is bad for you. And having fun, you're bad, whatever. And it's actually, there's way more to that experience. Clearly, like all of us as humans, we're not just, constantly soaking in bad. It's there's an effect when storytelling evolves, and that's intriguing and attractive, and we get more skillful as an audience, and now we are craving this interesting new elements to keep us engaged. And a lot of media has taught us to do that at different stages in our lives, and it can go, or depending on our mood, we may want something that's less taxing or more taxing, and that kind of thing. And that book does a good job of characterizing that as like what you noticed with the 8th grade audience, really wanting to, or when the 7th graders were like, I don't know, and it's that it probably would have been a great 6th grade book. But then at that stage, so we're learning from the media, and we're becoming more skilled and practiced in ways we consume it. What we expect from it.
Yeah. And I think that I'm working with some very savvy people who understand that, like even if it's intuitive, but they just understand that. Well, I guess like there's something about being a youth advocacy group where you're really including youth and making them a part of it. It's like there's like a youth steering committee in the organization. And I think automatically baked into that sort of ethos, you've inoculated yourself against the idea of, oh, you kids, you just don't like, all you like is dumb stuff. What's with you and the TikToks? I don't get it, And that's the kind of thing that I'm also sort of aligned to be suspicious of, and we talked about this, I think, on an extra lean, that assembly I went to in high school where they were playing that Van Halen video Right Now, and like, right now youth is king, and all the kids like, yeah, we're the future, I'm like, okay, our parents thought that too. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. We're not the most unique and only great generation of all time. Like, there's going to be another younger generation, and we got to honor them too, because the kids are almost always right. So, it's like I didn't have those words when I was 17 years old, but I remember feeling that in my gut. And I like sort of made a promise to myself, like, don't let go of that. Like, hang on to that. Don't be the old man who thinks that children are stupid. So there's that too. Like listen to them. Their feedback is important. It matters. And in this case, their feedback is important and it matters because they are the people who are going to receive the thing. And their reaction to it is super valuable information to keep this thing sustainable so I can still keep making that sweet money on drawing these books.
Yeah, that's part of it too. So the service is also a mechanism to engage in a sustainable trade.
Yep.
So that's that is an important element because I mean, this isn't like you can't go dig a great inclusive interesting comic out of a hole in your backyard and just whatever. Eventually, even if you could, you're gonna empty the hole or you're gonna have a problem because there'd be a giant hole in your backyard. You don't have a backyard anymore.
This is like a whole like side topic that we can maybe talk about in an extra lean someday. Is like this is why I think it's difficult for me to get to when people say like, well, find your truth and express your truth. I'm like, I don't know. I'm so conditioned to, I've relied so much on feedback from the people who I'm making the thing for to help guide my ideas and help me steer it towards what they need. That for me to say like, this is what you need is like really difficult for me to get to, I'm practicing it and we could talk about it in a more, nuanced way in the future. But like, I think that my inclination is to go towards service first and find the expression in the service of the service, but finding the expression first is not as I'm not as fluent in that, and I'm working on it. So
yeah, I mean, same boat. I have all kinds of unapproachable drawings and journals and stuff that I'm like, who is this for, right? And then because that's the thing is, as soon as you turn it into a service, it is for someone and with them as well. That just the distinction of sometimes anyway, it is an awesome topic. Well, let's bookmark that for continuing to talk about.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let me put it this way. Anybody who's listening, if you want to go into our Discord and say like, that's a topic I want to hear more about. This is what they do on YouTube. I noticed like anybody who's interested in this, give a comment in the comments feed and then we'll make an extra video about it. Like, because the people who interact with this thing that we make called Lean Into Art, your feedback matters to us, helps us shape the thing. Okay. Yeah. So do you want to take a break and then come back and like unpack what that whole experience was and like sort of like hang the ideas on the events so that we can like further like more deeply think about how this is applicable to a variety of scenarios, not just if you're a lucky SOB like me who falls into working with a company that is so perfectly aligned with his values.
I think, that sounds really good. Let's reflect on what happened
and
try to find some patterns in there. Sounds good. Okay.
So in about a minute and a half, we're going to do just that. First, got to thank some people who make this show possible. And I mean the folks who support us on Patreon. Patreon.com/LeanIntoArt is the website. What is it? It's a way for you to give us a monthly upvote. If you believe in me and Rob and what we do, you can make our show, our project more sustainable by contributing as little as $1 a month. And I want to thank 5 people who've been doing exactly that. Nate Marcel. Thank you, Nate, for believing in us and what we do. You can find Nate on Twitter at Great Sea Monster. Thank you, Nate. And Brandon Dayton, longtime friend of the show. Also a podcaster. You can find his podcast very easily by following him on Twitter at Brandon Dayton. And Chris Watkins. Thank you, Chris, for supporting the show on an ongoing basis. Stephen Stone Bush. Thank you, Stephen. Also great to see you in the Lean Into Art Discord. And Becca Hilburn, who you can find everywhere online at Natto Soup. You could join them all at patreon.com/leanitoart, where you will find all the shows we make, as well as the extra leans, the shows we record monthly, only for people who support us on Patreon. Those posts become an open mic thread where you can talk about whatever you want in a safe space with fellow leaners. It also gets you access to the Lean Into Art Discord. Well, the Lean Into Art Discord is open to the public, but we have 3 channels that are only available to people who support us on Patreon. Patreon.com/leanitoart is the website. Thank you to everybody who supports us there. It means a lot to us.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's open to the whole public, of course, our Discord, but it's not open to any wieners. So.
That's true. That's true. Wieners need not apply. Okay. Well, some music to get us into the next part of the episode. There we go. Now we're like pumped and motivated. If talking about service before wasn't getting us motivated, a little bit of Dragon Ball, an injection of Dragon Ball Z will get us there. So, what happened in that project? Where do you want to start?
I know it was hard not to wonder about that a bit along the way, because you're just noticing certain elements. You have the matchmaking. Like, what's really tough is that, like, there's you need to have some kind of purposeful examination all along the way, right? Because finding a really good client is an incredible gift. It's a good thing, but it's not magic. It's not an accident. I mean, so how did you, like, that's one of the foundational
okay, yes, let's point to that very quickly.
Elements here.
Yes, how I fell in with this client, it wasn't magic and it wasn't an accident. It was years of me showing up in my community, offering the service that I had to offer. So I had been doing comics workshops in Southeast Michigan for 4 or 5 years at that point. So I had been consistently showing up at libraries and schools to do workshops, making myself known in the community. That year, the city of Chelsea had a project where they would have an artist in residence, where the Chelsea District Library and the Rotary and other civic groups, including Seriously, which was like a brand new organization at the time, had a project where they would bring in an artist to do a lot of work in their community for a whole year. So I was the artist in residence in Chelsea for, I think it was 2011. And that meant a lot of things. It meant, like, I was going to all the schools. It meant I was bringing in other artists from the community to do more comics related events. And in any case, Seriously saw what I had to offer, saw that I was a professional cartoonist, and said, hey, we're launching this initiative. We're thinking a comic book might go really well with it. What do you think? So we had a meeting, right? So that's how that partnership began. It began with, we had very parallel, mutual missions. They saw direct evidence of how I could contribute to that mission and asked for a meeting, and then that's where it began. So I didn't just turn a corner and they were there.
Did you do one of those things at that meeting where, I mean, did you come with like a big thick book that was, all kinds of cited references and examples and so much content it would take them a month to get through thoroughly, or did you just threw it at them? You went, boom, comics, give me money. What'd you do? What happened?
You know that scene with the FBI agents in Raiders of the Lost Ark when Indiana Jones comes in with the giant book and he has the chalkboard with the staff of Ra and all that? No, it wasn't like that at all. I came to the room with a notebook, a couple copies of my comics, and I said, like, well, what are you all thinking about here? And they started describing the ideas, and I said, well, I could see how it could go this way. I started just sort of brainstorming different iterations of what the project could look like. And I expressed a lot of enthusiasm about that age group. I said, I love making comics for kids. I love working with kids. You have my commitment as far as that goes, but let's talk about what kind of iterations this thing could look like. And I think it was at that first meeting where I said, like, the original idea was, let's just do a book for second graders and we'll see what happens. And I said, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could make one that happens every year? Wouldn't that be? And they're like, yeah, that would be great. We'll see how it goes, and then like the next year, like, you want to do a third grade book? So, but yeah, the initial meeting was more of like, just like talking about what could this thing look like and how committed are you, the artist, to doing it. Right. But there was nobody requested a CV. Nobody wanted, letters of recommendation. I mean, there was a background check, of course, because I was working with children. Yeah. But as far as like credentialing, my credentialing was me showing up and doing the work that they saw. You had the self-evident resume where you've been doing the work. It was very observable. Then, so it's worth noting just like how can those elements fit together? Because if you're trying to make a leap to, okay, close a deal, then you're probably trying to come in from like a
maybe some public institutions putting out requests for proposals, or grant processes and stuff like that. I mean, because that would be another route into this.
Yeah.
And
I mean, to that idea, I did bring, like I said, copies of my books, and that was more or less to just show them the idea that I can ship a thing. Here's evidence that I finished a thing. I'm not a sophist. So,
well, and you demonstrated you basically provided a sample of what it's like to work with you in that meeting.
Yeah.
Because you did not, because what I wrote on my note is I thought you would have, I don't know, I was like, did he go in with a pitch, right? And you just went in ready to share and also learn what they needed, but you didn't have a prescription. A lot of folks would have showed up with a pitch, but your pitch emerged from including them first.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Wow, that's
because they said I do remember this, and actually I was talking about this with Chris, who's in the chat when I was live streaming the other day when I was drawing the Captain Seriously pages. Is they said we want to make a Captain Seriously superhero. What does that look like? And I said, well, what are, like, if I design this, what are going to be future iterations of the idea? Like, is it just going to be a comic book? Are you going to eventually make, like, because if these are going to be delivered at assemblies, are you going to have people dressed as the characters? Because that will inform the design. Because, like, if I design somebody with like a skin tight costume with little red underpants, it's going to be tricky finding the teacher who will feel comfortable in that outfit or even looks appropriate in that outfit, Like, so maybe the hero should be in a jumpsuit, because like the jumpsuit feels like it's action oriented. It could be the color of your organization, and people could dress up as that character with off the rack, materials. You don't have to like blow your budget on making a costume. Now, I didn't know at the time that eventually they were going to make like full on mascots of the characters. So like Dame Ladycat and Monstrark, the main villain, and Dino Gator, one of the heroes, are all like costumes now, which is a whole nother layer of bananas. You've seen them, right?
So you did have, like, it's really fascinating. What you had was not a prescriptive pitch, but you had sort of like what I'm hearing. There's no way it was all maybe it all was invented in that room. What my hunch is, what I'm hearing is that you had sort of a curated collection of dreams and possibilities of wouldn't it be cool ifs, and then found a way where they were relevant in that session, that collaborative work session, discovering this mutual discovery is what that meeting sounds like.
Good.
And then you had, so like with such a catalog of those things, you composed both like a tactical pitch and then open the door toward a bunch of things. Like, you didn't just open the door to multiple grades, you foreshadowed a pile of things. That it wasn't like you were being precious either. So let's talk about transparency. Sometimes when we have those nourished ideas that we cherish and that are like, oh, that's a solid idea, I'm sitting on it until I can get the big check, and it's not coming out until then. You go back in the whole idea. No, like, see where you were there and you were like, this one and this one and this one. And I think, I mean, so you got them to participate in this web of possibilities, even if it, so one of the things they call it in design is it's priming. So it's a thing to be very careful about. Priming an audience is, in a way you could think of, you're priming yourself. Like, so for me in elementary school, when I'd watch a video with friends about skateboarding, we were priming ourselves to go skateboarding, like, this is the feelings and the ideas and the tricks we're going to try or whatever. Not that I was ever good at tricks. I was fast at just standing and pumping and going fast in a straight line. That's what I do on a skateboard.
I thought you were going to say you were fast at biffing it.
Biffed spectacularly. Still have a few of those scars.
Oh man.
Not wise.
But priming.
Grew up in a time, not enough padding, not enough helmets. I don't know.
That's
it's
true.
Not like they weren't invented. I just didn't have them.
Yeah. Well, and they were also not fashionable. At least, like, I remember the skate. No. My little brother was a skater, and the group that he traveled with, I remember as a 50-year-old going like, this doesn't seem very safe to me. and sure enough, like, nice. There's a bone sticking through your arm now. Way to go, Bill. But anyway.
Okay, so let's see, we're going with all that stuff.
Priming.
Yeah, priming is, but that's cool. Like that's a transparent way to say, this is a potential future that we could all be part of.
Yeah.
And I think that was a generous thing for you to do. And that's a lot of trust, which I think trust is a huge aspect of service-minded delivery of capabilities. Like without like believing in the parties present to understand a need, like doing service-minded work is there's extra work if the trust isn't present. And it's important to recognize that and to make, well, your work is first getting enough trust in order to do the rest of the work.
That is
or deciding that this isn't a fit because we can't even get where we need to go if we don't trust each other.
That is such a good observation, because yes, you're right. The reason this was as successful as it was, or is, I'm still doing it, a large part of that is that we all trusted each other in that room, and continued to.
Clearly mutual too.
Yeah.
Like, and that's when trust is a great fit, where sometimes we get, and you should be judicious about this, right? So don't just run around and shout all your best ideas at everyone you meet, but like but seeking out those situations and it's neat. Like, did you have a recognition? You might, like, what happened in your head in that room where you were like, it's time to go to paint the future or whatever? Like, what was that? How did you recognize that in the moment, that it was going well?
It was going well. Well, I mean, did I know it was going well? That's an interesting question as I'm thinking back on that meeting. I mean, granted, this meeting was
instinctually, you may have got this,
well,
your instincts may have had your back, but
yeah. Well, one was I was invited to the room by people who had seen me perform. So there was like a sort of an unvoiced sort of recognition that I was bringing value into the room. I think I had that going for me, is that there was this articulated sort of assumption that, okay, well, they're asking me here because they've seen that I can do, and they know that I can bring value to them. So I've got a certain amount of, I don't have to win them over kind of attitude going in. And when, I think it was when they said, and I don't remember the exact words, but like the idea was explained to me that we don't want this to be something that is left in the kid's lap without any context and without any like formal connection to what the organization's ultimate goal is, right? We want these kids to, they said essentially something along the lines of like this, we want this to be an artifact that explains to the child that their community cares about them. And I was instantly taken back to second grade or third grade, where McGruff the crime dog came to our school, and I went to a very rural school. So like having any kind of classroom visitor was like a big deal. We didn't have authors come to our school. We didn't have, assemblies where like some local celebrity showed up. It was usually like somebody from the community, but McGruff the crime dog himself, the costume, came into the lunchroom and did a little presentation. We're like, oh my gosh, it's him. And he's like, I got comic books for everybody. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's got comic books for everybody. This is like, everything's right about this moment. There's a talking dog in a jacket, and he's giving me comic books. How could this thing get any better? And then I opened the comic book, and it was like, there wasn't a story. There was just like sort of like a page of like, I want to go outside. Don't go outside without reflective clothing, that kind of thing. And you know what I'm talking about? It totally felt like a PSA, a public service announcement. And then in like the last page, like it opened up, it's like, it's 2 pages, not even like a full book. And
this talking dog has all warnings, no warmth.
Yeah. And I have a real memory of feeling like, what a ripoff. Like this, I felt like you primed me to do amazing things and be really excited about this. And then I got the thing, and it felt like it was a brochure. And again, I wouldn't have the words for it as a third grader, but that's how it felt. I remember really feeling like the disappointment of that moment. And so when they essentially said the words like, we don't want that to happen. I was like, okay, thank you for saying that, because here's my memory. And then I told them that story of McGruff the crime dog, and I'm like, wow, if we could do something that's richer than that, like that has a story where the messaging is in the story if you look for it, the teacher can point to it, but the characters are not turning towards the child saying, this is what the story's about, then we've got something. And they agreed. And then I felt like, okay, well, now that we agree on that, we can go further and talk about all these other things. Now, when you talk about trust, did I give them everything I had? No, because like the design of Dame Lady Cat in the comic, she was inspired by my cat Maggie, but I didn't make her look exactly like Maggie because we hadn't ironed out what the rights were with everything yet. You know, like I hadn't signed all the contracts. I was just doing like initial character sketches. And I'm like, well, I'll make her vaguely like Maggie, but I don't want them to own the likeness of my beloved cat, you know? So I'll change her a little bit, right? So she evokes her, but it's not the same. That trust grew as we worked together. Yeah.
To point out a couple of things in
Yes,
what you're
please.
describing. So instinctually, and some of it explicit, just like you're describing that sometimes you could be in a meeting where you know you want to do, you live and breathe, you're going to do this in a service-minded way.
Mm-hmm.
And then what about the bigger mission stuff? What about this client is compatible with that? Either the mission that you care a lot about, or the method of service-minded design, right? So you found the common. You're finding potential and common ground and recognition as you're going through this conversation. And not to belabor this, but this is the key moment. This is where the project really became a possibility and whatnot, right? So you noticed their principled approach, and you talked more about principles to get agreement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you're like, oh wow, like so here's an example of what we don't want to do. What do we want to embody? That's what our principles are. And as far as how we, like what we try to do with our service and how we go about it. And you're living and breathing the how you go about it. The method, you're sort of proving by how does this team interact and what kind of trust is present? Can you navigate criteria, constraints, come to a decision and stuff like that? Like, so you're getting healthy signals across the board from what I can tell. So anyway, and that's right. And that's a little bit of because we could talk about and like send a love note to this project, all kinds of like, there's all kinds of ways to dig into it. But like, because of this episode being about the service mindedness and the layers of, service minded, design can be, well, it can be many. It's like, why do you even like, what would be the opposite of that be is super transactional, right?
Mm-hmm.
Transactional and arm's length. Hey, we need a comic. Go make that comic for us. That's now your problem. My money fueled you to fix my problem.
Yep.
And then there's a lack of involvement and a lack of deeper meaning and awareness. And maybe even, depending on the team and their nature, like a sort of a systemic reinforcement of the arm's length. And that's there's only so far you can get with those kinds of situations. And anyway, not to go negative, but like that's something you can run into when you're trying to engage in trade and provide your service. And like when like we're talking about, a good example has the risk of happy path, right?
Yes.
Where happy path is when you code or build something, or you designed a service and you hung out your shingle and you're helping people discover you and become aware, and someone asks you to do something that either doesn't fit or isn't what you believe in or whatever, and you're like, oh crap, I didn't plan for this.
Yep.
So it's good to throw those not happy path ideas at.
And I've had situations, yes, this is a good place to put this, is this idea of what happens when when everything's not perfectly worked out, and maybe you walked in with really positive signals where you have a lot of trust, and then all of a sudden something is asked or an expectation is placed in front of you that you didn't count on. And like, I've had situations where they suddenly say, okay, this next part, and this is not seriously, this is a completely different part of my life, or time in my life, but somebody said, okay, this next part, we're going to have like this really adult situation happen in the book. And I was like, oh, I did not know you were going to go there. And because of that, I never articulated to you that I have this very strict boundary that I will not draw anything over PG-13. That's my personal thing. That's my boundary. I don't feel a need to explain it to anybody, but that's the term that I've dictated. And I did not articulate that to you. So now we have to have this uncomfortable conversation when we're already underway. How can we negotiate this? So, and then that becomes, a potential friction point. And there have been moments where I show up in that service-minded way to blank stares. People just look at me like, what? Why are you saying all these words? Why do you need to talk so much about ideas? Let's just do a thing, And then I go home and I go like, oh, they hired the wrong person. I don't feel good about this at all. Because now we have a lot of difficult conversations, and how much showing up do I have to do before I say like, I'm throwing good effort after bad. So,
if you think about that mutual matchmaking thing and have some kind of something that helps you navigate this, so that you're hiring them as much as they're hiring you.
Mm-hmm.
And that helps you, find these things out. And it's pretty, it is exciting and elevating when you start to find common ground, like being interviewed in certain situations. I ask a lot of questions, right? So I get a sense for like, and I try to be, professional no matter what, but like if I'm discovering a situation where we don't have a lot of common ground and, this isn't going to, go well, I will think of things that I can do to just, positively leave that as not going to do this opportunity. Right. But with clarity, and say like, this is really cool. I don't think like I'm a fit for what you're describing. I think you're looking for someone with this other approach, and, just positive psychology, emphasize the thing that I see that I think is where their, positive path is, and walk away. But it's something like when you find where other people believe in what you believe in, and you're like, oh crap, this is great. It's good to practice just questioning it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And to try to not end up in those situations, which I know I have as well. Like, oh yeah, take the thing you built and now add digital rights management. And
and there's Rob's boundary.
Oh no, I'm in the oh no comic before it's invented. But
anyway. That's a tough scenario. And when those events happened at an earlier time in my life where I was really not ready to negotiate that as thoughtfully as I would now. Because more recently I've done the positive psychology, like polite exit. Okay, well, I don't think I'm the right person for this. Let's see if we can find somebody who is the right person for this. Here's some options that I think would be good to strike up a conversation if you're interested. Or maybe this doesn't need to be a comic. Maybe this needs to be something else. Exploring options that like accept what. Well, this goes to this another part of the service-driven design is like when those frictions were introduced, where it's like I want it to be color, I want it to be black and white. My next thought was, okay, why is this important to these two parties? Let's ask them. Why? There's got to be a reason that you feel so strongly about this. Let's hear it, right? Instead of me saying like, up, artist here, shut up and listen. All right, you primitive screwheads, this is the way we're going to do it. It's like I don't enter a room with collaborators that way. I go like, well, why is it so important that it's color? Because maybe there's a good reason to just make it all black and white. Well, maybe black and white, maybe there's a good reason to make this all color. Let's find out what your rationale is. So,
what a good point. Yeah, that openness to accept, wherever they're at is wherever they're at. And then if that does end up, like if you uncover a conflict, and then at least you understand the nature of the conflict and what makes sense for navigating it going forward. Is it an impasse or between you and this project, or more likely it's something way not that, but the willingness to explore and not stop the sharing is it leads, it's like you get to embody that you become a catalyst. You're kind of a facilitator for this team to help them unpack their own ideas, see one another and their ideas and how they can integrate together for the given purpose. And that's where maybe that's if there are two buckets of this, I'm just kind of winging that, is like maybe there's the mission side of service-minded design and then the method side of service-minded design, and that's embodying the method.
I am so tempted to give you a hot foot right now, Rob. Like in an emotional sense, in that I'm thinking about your art sound off entries this year, and I'm thinking about like I'll point to artists, and then I will see if I can get you riled up, because I want to talk about like my experiences, like the artist who walks the room saying, "You dumb non-artists, you don't understand all of the work that I put into this, all of the complex and genius thought I put behind my work. So you don't get to talk about this because you are not educated on this the way I am. I'm coming in with my expertise, and I'm telling you, you dummies who don't do art, just shut up and listen." And something
you trying to pick a fight?
I am trying to pick a fight with you. I mean, I know that there are people in coding and design who kind of walk into a room with this, like, you just don't use that tool. What are you thinking? Putting things, whatever. Pick a thing. Say,
well, you're on the good path. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, just having a designer come in a room and say you just don't.
Yeah.
Is often there's something on the wrong foot, right? And I get a huge reaction, like the good old Treebeard, a wizard should know better,
right?
Kind of thing. And especially when you're very skilled and accomplished and very published kind of designer. So what's your concern? So when they come in a combative, non-inclusive way, or
something I learned. I mean, and I want to cop to this. I'm busted on when I was at an earlier part of my career. I had this notion of, and I think I was celebrating it in a positive way, but I was still doing it in an exclusionary way, where it was like, cartoonists are the best people. It's like, well, that's celebrating a group, but you're doing it implicitly at the expense of other people. I could say they're my favorite people, but they don't have to be the best people. But so I'm copping to the fact that I think this is a human thing, and I'm forgiving myself for doing that, and I will also forgive others for doing that to an extent. But something I learned is that, you know what? There is a reason that the client doesn't understand why all of the technicalities of what I do. That's why they hired me. They hired me because they don't know how to do that, and I shouldn't expect them to fully understand it. It's my job as a freelancer to bring them to me. Also, I have to acknowledge that I don't know everything they know. And so it's upon me, it's my responsibility to interview them, to understand the full network and complexity of their concerns, so I can take that as informing information into the project that I'm making with them. So when I walked in that room, I was like, okay, look, school teachers, I've been teaching for 5 years. I haven't been teaching the way you've been teaching. You're with these kids all day. You live with them. You are very aware of what developmentally they are dealing with. I need your input on this, right? And then when they would say things to me that would confuse me about like what they wanted about the characters, I'd be like, okay, I'm hearing this. Let's talk about that idea and let's expand on it and see if we can figure out like what we're really trying to get to with these characters. And I did 20 different character designs before we got down to the initial 5 that became the heroes, And that was through back and forth and understanding, and not saying like when they said like, well, I don't think we should use this because X, and whatever X was made no sense to me, right? I'm like, what? Why would you say that? And then I would say, okay, and I could walk back and go like, well, you hired me. I'm the artist. That's the way it's going to be, pal. What are you gonna do about it? Fire me? Go ahead. See if you get somebody else to do it for like the money that you're offering. Whatever kind of like combative argument I wanted to make. No, I went back and said like, well, okay, you're saying this, but here's like all these other instances where I can point to evidence that suggests the opposite. I'd like to get some other feedback on this. What does everybody else think? What are you really after here?
Yeah, I mean, you're describing. You're going to run into a lot of conflict, especially the more people involved, and there should be lots of people involved in lots of kinds of projects. And sometimes a lot of projects we maybe aren't set up to succeed in because we aren't involving enough people to have any conflict, right? Because it's you're getting farther from service mindedness, and you're getting pretty close to a transaction.
Yeah.
And then because you're onto something where you've included a perspective that trips you up, and that you need to navigate somehow. like I'm a silly human, like all the silly humans. I just happen to be one who's doing systemic minded design, and I get to be at peace with and remind myself how I'm always coming up short and being aware of a problem. But the way to then cross the threshold of having credible perspective is including enough people to get the credible perspective, and practicing doing that in a way that isn't just feeding my biases and all that kind of stuff. And of course, there's pet issues and concerns and things, and there's cultural crap that like you can't fight. Like, you want me to, piss myself off, I'll think about how frameworks have overtaken all kinds of things in delivery of computing systems. And the idea that it would be like if you couldn't draw a comic except through a very templated, these are eyes, this is a head, this is God. Right. And it's kind of like that. And it's a little bit like, as far as where that comes from, whatever. I mean, it's the opposite of involving humans. And it's like why that stuff emerges. The different quirky biases of communities and different abuses of power cause that crap to happen. Sometimes, also not always. Somewhere in there, there's validity. There's validity in like their perspective, and there's validity for the stuff that they're adapting toward. Where it ends up as a solution, I often think is just not a fit, right? So if anyone's like dogmatic about coding frameworks and procedures like movements, like the agile movement and all this kind of stuff, there's all these kinds of problems that like how so I'm looking in the chat to be aware of if I'm triggering anybody with different things.
Yeah, I think you did.
Anyway, let's see, this stuff emerges, like some of these different kind of quirks that like hit me as sort of a hate ball that I need to work around inside of me, because I'm not going to include that when I'm trying to navigate a thing that's about other people. It's not about me and what I dislike. I can work on a project where they use the heck out of frameworks or use the heck out of a weird ass interpretation of Agile that is all about just not including people. Because I'll be the advocate. I'll find the way. I'll navigate. I'm happy to question and learn, like, why are you doing that? And all this kind of stuff. Anyway, the having the capacity to understand the why and the procedure to help people get meaningful, useful things is like however you do that, that's your recipe of service-minded design. And I don't know where I can think of things that are counter to that are barriers, and like commonly doing work in large organizations. You're going to have literally, like, think about the function of a large organization. It's to be very optimally great at a particular thing that is funding their existence. And the reason that they are as big as they are is because you can say, oh, there's so much waste and this and that, it's big, it can't be efficient. No, actually, a lot of times it's that big because that's what efficiency looks like when you make it only possible to do one particular thing. But the problem is big organizations are like, they get the oh no, right? Oh no, we need to do something slightly different than what we're doing. Oh no. And we super can't do it because we're super duper optimized to do this one thing. And, anyway, so, people like me and that are doing the service-minded design are willing to step outside different dogmatic things and practices and say, well, how do you navigate this? How do you find a way to do the thing that hasn't been done or whatever? And some orgs are compatible with that and some aren't. But anyway, I don't know. I got like 10 tangents here, Jerzy. And I was trying to like be a good citizen and jump in and get frustrated with you. And I can list the things, but like, I don't know how I can tie that back in a strong, useful way.
I mean, I was going for the cheap thrill of just like pushing your button of like, I know it's something you feel passionate about, and I know it'll bring a lot of energy to the episode. And also it's something I believe in too, is that like, it's like, yeah, when I'm getting together with buddies over beers and like I get on a jag about sound effect design, and like me and Zach Giolongo have literally screamed at each other over it. And I tell my students, like, This is like one of the things you have to look forward to as the career is like these things that make no sense to the outside world, but are so meaningful to you, are things you can literally scream in another person's face about. And it's all in good sport, and it's all in this name of like just it's a form of celebrating your love of the thing.
In the right room, it's a workout, right?
Yes.
In the right room, you're leveling up.
Yeah.
Because you happen to be of the very specialized, specific context that is addressing problems that you see because of how much practice and specific language and understanding your practice has led to. So you feel like you're in your community, you're with someone else who like cares about this super specific thing.
But there's no place for that in a group where you have an objective to collaborate on making a thing, right? That kind of barbaric chest thumping in its playful workout sense is, like you said, it has its context and it's a useful thing. But like when it comes to me working with people who don't have the context and the background that I have on this thing, and I'm one piece of a larger organization, it's like I feel like thinking about mission and thinking about service becomes the sort of default mode for me. And
oh my gosh, it's the difference between pure research and applied research. Like you're saying, like you have these skills and capabilities that you could have some pure way of going about it, but a lot of times how you bring it to the world is through applying it. And you can't apply it if you don't understand the context and the people and their needs and maybe even the history and how they got there and all this stuff. So putting it to practical use does involve that a lot. Different voices come from different perspectives, and you can get the whole, if you have a series of wildly popular things that are celebrated that maybe make you an incredibly strong potential authority, then you don't necessarily need to do that. I wonder what would happen, like in that alternate universe with you, Jerzy, walking in the room with having the like some level of authority that is so accomplished and so beyond. Not that you aren't, like that I'm not, or whatever, but like there's something weird about when groups see the ultra popular something, right?
Yeah.
Like you could give the same talk that Dan Pink could give, and right? So or pick anyone, like so I don't know.
Other
than like authority is a thing to manage and to navigate and work around and with when you're doing this kind of thing. And if you happen to be the authority, I guess you get to do less of the inclusion if you want. But I couldn't see that being a thing that I would ever want to do.
No.
Says me right now.
Right. Yeah. I have been thinking about this a lot in recent years, and not like about like what I'm going to do when I'm like, profoundly famous or anything like that. But it's more like this my whole relationship with power and how I feel about it, because I'm discovering that I'm really like super not interested in power outside of its ability to make people like raise people up. Like that's like the only application that is like remotely appealing about it to me. Is like, oh, do I have control of the lever so I can distribute the power in a thoughtful way and like give people access to things? Love it. That's awesome. But like, if people start coming to me as like, I've had this happen a couple times in my life where somebody's come to me and like they clearly like I did something in my work that moved them in a way where they're nervous about talking to me, and I don't know what to do with that yet. I don't know, like it's like what I really like. My instinct, my inclination is like put that away, because that is you just came in with like nitroglycerin. Don't do that, But that's not fair to them, because they're coming at me with something that's really meaningful to them, And I don't want to say put all your big feelings away, because I don't know what to do with somebody who has big feelings and is treating me like an authority. So the jury's still out on that for me, and I still need to like work on that, because if it should happen again, I want to meet the moment responsibly and really honor what's being shared with me. But yeah, I don't know if I really responded to what you were sharing in that moment.
And that moment can come in lots of different ways, and I like how you describe that. It's let's see. So Sketchboy01 mentions once you get to a certain level, you get to show off your unique fighting style with comrades in the creative dojo. And this is a kind of trust too, I guess, right? Where it's sort of, well, you get a little bit trapped in that authority, and like if you could only perform it in a way, like to practice means you may mess up, right? It means that not everything is perfect, and if you're going to go at your full potential, finding the next, like where do you go next with these ideas that a lot of people have accepted, it can get, it may not keep resonating with that audience and stuff. So that's an interesting trusting context to be in. And I think it would be hard to, I don't know. It's an interesting angle to think about. It's like, where does it get difficult to apply the service-minded behaviors, right? But
and
I still think it's possible to apply in any of those contexts.
I hope you're right. I really do. I want to believe that. But it's like I get really nervous about the idea of like if the reputation is such that there's like not a short path to trust, but an instant one. Because I feel like the establishment of the trust is part of that spell casting. And the establishment of trust requires a careful walk around each other, like two animals sort of checking each other out, and I don't know. That's. But see, this is me working from a limited perspective of somebody who hasn't walked into the room with instant trust. Even when I walked into that first meeting with the Seriously folks, it was, let's see what we can do together. It wasn't like, well, Jerzy, you just make your dream come true. We'll fund it because we believe in you, right? There wasn't like a blank check put in front of me, and people weren't going even that, when I walked by.
What the heck is the only path forward except to then say, okay, so where are you at? What's your life like, and what do you need? You know what I mean? And how can we start to base any kind of decisions that are relevant? Because it's the service mindedness is a really powerful tool to even someone who has that kind of voice. I've had clients where, you've been there long enough and you get a reputation for solving problems, and people come to you and this kind of thing. And, some folks will show up and ask, describe a situation and expect an answer. And I have lots of questions that lead to somewhere, but they don't show, they're not instant answers. And so even that so then you have a different, it's like, well, hey, yay, we don't have to worry about the funding and your enthusiasm for my voice, I guess. But, well, we still have to worry about relevance and including the rest of the picture of the reason we're doing this whole thing, right? So
I guess I can imagine a scenario where your reputation and your authority sort of does the work of the research to see if you're the right fit for the thing. We know you're the right fit for the thing because you have such a body of work and you've done all this. We can point to 12 things that you've done that are directly relatable to this thing. I suppose in that scenario, then you could still do service-minded, and isn't just like a blind sort of like, well, you're famous, you're an authority, therefore you know what to do in the situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's in a way, it's you're being paid for a repeat performance, as opposed to that may have some nuance differences, as opposed to a process of like collaborative discovery and creation. So it's like previous proven value instead of like, well, let's figure this out.
As I think about this,
it's not wrong.
I wonder if that's like something I need to like work into my own marketing materials as a teaching artist, is that like bringing language that points to adaptability. It's like, I'm a person who's ready to reshape. I'm not a person who has like out of the box things for you, although I have them if that gets you to talk to me, right? But like, I also want to show up ready to collaborate. Yeah,
I think that's the thing. A lot of I like to keep an eye out for how others are providing their services, right? And if someone has some combination of a business model of speaking and workshops and maybe writing or some other, element or product that they provide, I often will start scrolling through their website and start thinking about how are they presenting this, and what can I learn from it?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, so what you're describing may be essentially another way of presenting your service, because getting specific enough is actually, it's important. You can't just say comics, I'm a collaborator, and let's do this. It takes a little more specificity, which does mean you're doing some prescription, you're providing some like foothold or path that is appealing to people who you want to work with. So it's interesting that you want to use a bit of like where is your authority, where is your confidence, and how can you say that specific in a way that provides a distinction between just one big banner of I do this stuff, and how can you characterize that? So in other words, what you're describing was a potentially characterizing a custom, let's see, because you have custom story and learning system development.
I'm writing that down.
Right? Custom story learning system development versus story consulting and teaching, or I don't know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well,
so, yeah, that's a good point too. Extra point, right? That's I mean, I know it's a big we're going like deeper and farther than our notes convey, but this is a good point of like, well, to me, you have a service minded like, why are you doing what you're doing? And you want to find common ground with shared principle kind of clients, but then also like, how do you go about it? And then this last thing is like, well, how do you message that? So
yeah,
keep doing it.
Yep. And this would be something where it'd probably be beneficial to me to reach out to past collaborators and ask them if they could just like name, like, give me a word cloud, give me 10 words that you think of when you think of what I bring to a room, and use that as a starting point for writing that copy.
That's a great exercise. I did that when I started coaching. I asked, I have to dig out that interview if that would be good food for thought, but I asked, that's actually, that's a great tool because sometimes it's hard to find words to describe your own thing. And it's great to reach out to people who you've worked with.
Yep.
And,
well,
they say.
Is there anything else that you wanted to address today? I know we have a lot of stuff we kind of didn't get to. Surprise!
No, yeah, it's funny. That's always a danger. I love how concise you put. You have things in the notes, and I don't like how not concise some things I add to the notes are. But this was a useful exploration, and that's the whole intent. And yeah, there's always more. There's always more to explore.
Okay. Well, yep. We'll come back to this again. I don't expect we'll ever get tired of this topic. I have a feeling that if you ask us 2 years from now about service-driven design, you're going to get the same energy you get today. I think this is something we both cared about for a long time, and we'll probably only care about more as time goes on. So, but yeah, thank you for having this conversation with me. Do you want to take another break and then come back and talk about our 2-minute practice for this round?
That sounds awesome. Yeah, thank you as well, Jerzy. Let's do that.
Okay.
That thing you said. What's it? And if anyone's curious about the practice, I guess you can check out leanintoart.com/2-minute practice while you hear what we're exploring in our ad spot.
That's a good idea. So I'll pull that up on the screen. This is leanintoart.com/2-minute practice with the number 2. A little thing we do every 2 weeks. 2 weeks, 2 minutes, and introducing more practice into our lives. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But first, we got to thank some other people who make the show possible. And those people are us. We make the show possible. We make lots of things that we work really hard on, and we bring that thinking to this project called Lean Into Art. And the thing that I make that I hope you will check out that's free is the 4 Million Years Later podcast. It's not free, I should say, because it is asking for that, what is it called? Unreplenishable resource, your time. But I think it'll be time well spent if you're into story analysis, because this is a show where me and a good buddy sit down and analyze an episode of the Generation 1 Transformers cartoon series in story order. And this week's episode is one that I did not like. So you get to hear me like really break apart and seriously critique an episode. Most of the time I find something to like about every episode, and I'll say like, oh, I wish it could have been this, I wish it could have been that, but I understand why it couldn't be. This is one where I'm like, they clearly wanted to do this, and I don't think it landed. Also, content warning on this episode 48, Kremzeek. If you are uncomfortable with very old-fashioned portrayals of people who don't live in America, watch out. This one's got a lot of difficult things to get through. And also just like, it's almost like they wrote an episode where what if Optimus Prime took up drinking? And I just get so angry when I watch it. Even though it's one of the most memorable episodes because it's this cute little electric character named Kremzeek. But you can find it at 4millionyearslater.com. Very briefly, I will point to the first 4 Million Years Later t-shirt is now available. Yep. So in an episode called The Decepticon Raider in King Arthur's Court, my co-host Hoover made the observation that Ravage, the Decepticon cassette, will often save his fellow cassettes before he helps out other Decepticons. And on multiple occasions, like one of the Jets has asked for his assistance and he helps the other cassettes instead. And so Hoover coined this term, cassettes before Jets. And we made a t-shirt out of it, which you can find on our TeePublic page, which is also linked on the 4 Million Years Later website. You can get it right now. At the time of this recording, there's 10 hours left in the TeePublic sale, and you can get it for $13 instead of $20. So 4millionyearslater.com, and there's the link to the TeePublic store. So, Rob, are you ready to talk about what you got?
Yeah, I am. Okay, so I offer a variety of products and services. If you go to my website, robstenzinger.com, you can click on the store link, or you can go right to robstenzinger.com/store.html. And I'm just going to point out a few things you can reach out to me about. I do a variety of like creative coaching. You can like navigating what is your next product or project, career path type stuff. Or if you're starting up in, doing user-centered design and, really want to have some sort of, guidance or, helpful coaching along the way, I'm here to help you start your UX system. I also have a thing I do called the Product Practice Lab, where it's just all about getting that experience doing the whole cycle of creating products and practicing, leveling up with that. And then I do workshops. One I will mention, and just because it and all the others are still on sale on my Gumroad store. And I think, well, I'll run that sale at least through the holiday season, because you know what? It's a great last minute gift kind of thing. You could just download this, put it on a thumb drive or what have you, and super useful, like a great gift. Pretty small gift too. You can, pack it in put in someone's stocking or whatnot. Anyway, drawing user journey maps. This is a really good workshop that, in a way, we talked a lot about service-minded design, and service-minded delivery of like how you work as your sort of the mission and method and stuff to bring useful things about for the communities you serve. Well, drawing user journey maps embodies a lot of that. It's a really holistic, collaborative way to include voices and perspectives outside of your own. Even if you're like you're someone planning like some kind of complicated event, and it's like a personal event. You're doing a big virtual meetup for a thing, online game, or a like just a gathering of friends virtually right now. Well, this will help you think about the journey of what's it like before and during and after, and from different perspectives that you can figure out with the that are outside. Like you're really used to creating, you're really used to the art process, or you're a coder, you're really used to the coding process. Well, what if you include the business? What if you include design? Or if you're coming from design, all of this stuff, it's about including and creating a timeline and doing that in just this way that helps you see what's what are important things to focus on next for that given project? What are some weaknesses? You can look at the strengths too, but I'm thinking about where do you want to go next with it? And that's the Drawing User Journey Maps workshop for designing user experiences, gathering ideas, and collaborating. So you can check that out at my store, robstenzinger.com/store.html. A couple of links. Go to my Gumroad to buy that. And if you go to my Gumroad, be sure to use that offer code I was hinting at, Rob said 80, and you will get an unprecedented and not going to be repeated for a long time, maybe ever, discount of 80% off that price. And it really is super affordable, a great gift to check out. If you're a member of Skillshare, rock on. Just go to the Skillshare class, and you should be able to search for my name. And I'm just noticing my ad spot view isn't changing with my anyway.
Oh,
little technical difficulty, no big deal. But all my words apply. And anyway, yeah, go check out Drawing User Journey Maps as a workshop on Skillshare or at my Gumroad store. But if you go to Gumroad, use that offer code. Rob said 80. All right.
That's okay. There's Drawing User Journey Maps. I have noticed, Rob, that the NDI gets frozen sometimes when you're broadcasting between machines. It's happened to me a couple times with my live streams. I'm not sure what the idea is there, or what's behind that.
It froze up for me. All
okay.
Right.
Well, the last thing we hope you'll check out is the Lean Into Art Discord. And yes, we have a forum now. It's a place where you can have time-shifted conversations with fellow leaners where right now there's people who have shown up to the live stream and are contributing to the conversation with thoughtful comments, but that comment thread is chained to this video. You can have ones that are not chained to any video, but free-form conversations with fellow leaners in the Lean Into Art Discord. The invite link are in the show notes for this episode and every episode. And like we talked about earlier, there's a special, there's 3 channels that are for people who support us on Patreon, but there's 3 public channels where you can share some work in progress, share some of the different challenges you've been taking on, and comment on past episodes and suggest future episodes. So thanks to everybody who's been meeting us there. It's been great to get to know you and interact with you on an ongoing basis. Had a lovely conversation with Rachel Ross recently about story generation in there. It was really fun. So, okay. We had 2-minute practice time, Rob?
2-minute practice time. How's it going, Jerzy?
It is okay. This practice connected me with, and I anticipated this, and I was not disappointed. It connected me with some very, I would say some darkness. Unexpectedly. Well, I mean, expectedly and unexpectedly.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Yeah.
2-minute practicing again.
Yeah. So what was the practice this time that connected me with darkness, Rob?
Oddly enough, it was all about coming up with encouraging things. And it could have been just like how you characterize it was like passionate words when you look at the bigness of the world and situations, the universe, anything that comes out as a brainstorm of this kind of insight and encouragement of like something you would look at that somehow feeds you with like, oh yeah, I believe a little harder. I'm going to, I don't know, I get more excited, pick myself up, keep going.
Yeah.
What happened? Like the dark, that doesn't sound like keep going to me.
It is and it isn't. Well, I mean, okay, for me it is. But I understand how if somebody, and I'm nervous about even sharing them on screen because I know if somebody found these notes, they'd be like, "Are you okay?" You know, like it feels like a little bit like I've got a little bit of a goth journal going on in front of me. I'd like to start with yours.
Okay.
And then maybe we can talk about mine.
All right. Let's see. Yeah, there's a bit of vulnerability modeling going on here for sure. All right. So I did mine on my whiteboard and I did my normal thing where I now have that Siri action where if I do the, hey Siri, 2-minute practice, all of a sudden my spoken facilitation timer kicks in and, it's really convenient. But here I go. Yeah. I don't know. I think I had some similar feelings as you, Jerzy, with encouragement is I mean, it's really good. It's like you're walking along and just you encounter, well met positive feeling, and it's like someone's like, hey, I believe in you, or hey, I and whatever that is. A lot of times I'll see folks on Twitter that there's a few folks I follow that once in a while will, for whatever reason in their day, say, hey, I'm going to do pep talks, send me a tweet and I'll give you a pep talk, kind of thing. And that's kind of how I tried to do this for myself, but it just sort of came out however it came out. And it certainly isn't like practiced where it's like, oh yeah, I'm ready to go. I don't think I'd be tweeting a ton of this stuff, but well, let's see. So I first wrote the, 2-minute practice, encouragement, brainstorm. And I'm like, what am I about to write? So I wrote down, why stuck might be a reason to be encouraged. You're encountering friction or big feelings. It could be internal or external stuckness. Somehow that's the implication of needing encouragement for me. And so then I was like, I know you got this. Let your natural self be, and you are enough. The spirit and passion in you will take you far. It's okay to be stuck. Keep moving. Remember, your intention, let it stoke into a fire in your heart. I should have my guitar on right now.
It's like you're writing a Stan Bush song right in front of me.
I'm starting to feel that a little bit, but then I was like, well, Jerzy was like, oh, this is my next one. I don't have to share all these in like nitty gritty detail. I'm literally just randomly picking the, stuff I'm just picking it and sharing. So, okay. Can I do a better universe observation? Look at the bigness, whatever. So this is what I wrote for that, starting that 2-minute practice. You're a speck of infinite, amazing possibility in this big universe. You are valid and reasonable to feel as you do. Keep going gently and new possibilities will emerge. Up for a challenge? Oh my God, what did I write? What if you looked at this roadblock as a challenge? That sucks. That's fun. That's changeable. Well, there we go. No, I can't read my own writing. Up for a challenge. What if you looked at this roadblock as changeable? Okay, that's not as bad as my first reading. I'll go do a couple more. I love your voice and choices. It's in you. Be you. Here I come, Instagram. Reach for insight. Questions lead to somewhere worthwhile. This literally, like, so this was a session, this was a session, this was a session, and then this last one was a session. So I did like what, 4 or 5 sessions. It's okay for it to be tough and feel stuck. Notice this.
So I'm looking at,
you have it in you. What?
I'm looking at your sessions and I'm seeing like there's between 4 and 5 that you wrote per session. Okay. So that's roughly 30 seconds per sentence. The sentences are not short. Probably took about, so it seems like you were like, if I were to guess, you were like going through these pretty rapidly. You were like really, truly brainstorming and not like,
I was letting it fly out of me as fast as I could.
Okay.
And doubting myself every single second.
So I think like the difference between us, I did fewer. I think I did like 3 sessions but I had fewer pieces of output as a result. And I think my inner critic had more authority in the room when I was doing mine. And I think I think my inner critic was trying to drive me away from blanket, I don't want to call it blanket, statements that fall in lines of, I believe in you, you matter, you're valid. And even though I feel like that's something I could use to hear more from myself in my life, I think what I went to, and this is when I was talking about the darkness, is that I think I went to a lot of statements involving, like, I walked into it thinking, when do we need encouragement? We need encouragement when we're stuck. We need encouragement when we feel lost. We need encouragement when we feel fear. And I asked myself, yeah, you got some on there to that extent. Which one did you point to just now?
Oh, no. I mean, I was like, how wild. Did that hit you like as you were about to start this practice? Where
Yes.
you're like, wait a minute, why do I need to do encouragement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that basically I did the same thing, similar-ish, not exactly what you described, but like the idea of like encouragement doesn't seem natural. Like, when does encouragement seem natural? That's one way to ask that, where it's like, if I'm just doing a thing that isn't requiring me to reach down or address negative feelings in any way, it would feel a little weird to be encouraged.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
Like, way to click that website button. Woo! You know? No, I'm good. But like, maybe in the right context, that could be good, right? Where it's like, oh, I'm clicking the website button for the a grant application that is this thing I've been looking forward to and means so much to me, whatever, you know. So I could imagine a context of that working out. But
I think that's right, and I think that's probably where you and I have like a reflex to operate. But then I think about friends in my life I have friends who are like really active in expressing gratitude. Like, they make it a practice to express gratitude on a regular basis, and when you're in their presence, they're going to let you know how grateful they are for you for whatever you did. And it's not false, it's not phony, it's not an affect. They're doing it as a way to connect themselves with the emotion of gratitude to have a richer experience of living. But it can come across to somebody who maybe is less in contact with that emotion as, yeah, why did you thank me for showing up? You know, I showed up. That's what you do, right? Like, I remember, especially in my younger days, I worked at a company where I was there for like, I don't know, a few months, and I was a graphic designer, and they made me Employee of the Month. And I was like, and they're thanking me profusely for all this work that I did. I'm like, look, I just did my job. Like, you don't get a trophy for doing your job, do you? You know, like, and that's me like sloughing off this idea of like, come on, it's like I don't know what to do with that kind of encouragement, you know.
Can't you see? I've got an orange cone with a sign on it, says, you know, danger, Taoist in this cubicle.
Right. Yeah, they not only Taoist, but maybe some baggage regarding a sense of self-worth going on there too. Maybe one turned to Taoism because it sounded like it was very harmonious with this idea of like, you do not celebrate yourself, buddy. Okay, I won't. You know, so
you're like, hey, you know what? Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't like, I want to address your, like, that little joke you made about like, oh, here, Instagram, here I come. Like, cause like, I get it. Like, that kind of stuff can feel, and we talked about this in some recent episodes. It can feel very trite to package up a statement of, you know, oh, I don't know, you know, you are loved, live, laugh, love, that kind of thing. But if you are careful to contextualize it with the complexity that points to, then it's not trite anymore. It's only trite if you just say it and don't really like point to any kind of like careful implementation of that idea in your life, right? Like my friends who practice gratitude, they could just have a banner in their house that says gratitude, but when I go to that house, I see that banner, I'm like, yeah, I know what that word means to you. It trickles all the way down to every part of your life. You're very careful. And so like when your kid does something that you want to reinforce as a positive behavior, you're like, I really love the way you did that. Thank you for doing it that way. You know, like, that's not trite. That's active. That's like guiding things in your life, you know? So I don't know, but I get it. Cause like, it's also, I feel like this is, how do I put this? This is a very like a tool that's like used in public speaking that falls along the lines of evangelical talk too, right? And I could see why that would make us feel a little bit like uncomfortable, because that kind of persuasive technique can like really quickly run along the lines of like propaganda, you know. I'm gonna say this with
like using methods of persuasion.
Yeah. So yeah, so like it's not as simple as that. But like it has a power. It's worth acknowledging that power, and then it's worth asking ourselves, how do we implement that, and getting comments in the chat. Chris is saying, some statements lose their meaning when overused or overheard. Certainly, like if anybody's ever said the word like potato or sink or tabletop over and over and over again, and suddenly like it starts to like you start to like question the spelling of the word, or the word itself starts to look bizarre to you, because like just saying the word, like statements can have that same kind of effect. Anyway, that's a little bit of a tangent, but I just want to address this idea. Like I like what you did, because I feel like this is something that it's easy for certain artists, pointing here at me, to look past those statements as not having much utility, when what they're pointing to, they're inviting me to think a little harder in that direction. Like, you are a speck of possibility in an infinite universe, addressing the fact that you are tiny and insignificant, but also saying, but that's potential, and that's potential that cascades across generations if you do your job, So anyway, but so to mine, and I when I say darkness, what I found is that I kind of got obsessed. I became very interested in the idea of that emotional space of feeling stuck or alone or afraid, and really thinking about like the mysterious nature of those moments. Those moments usually precede a transformation of some sort, not huge transformation. I'm not exiting Monstro with Geppetto in the boat, but like, we're always a little bit different after we do a thing, and so I've recently become very enamored of this language, and maybe this comes from that podcast, This Jungian Life, that I've been listening to, of like the darkness pointing toward potential transformation, right? Yeah, you're scared. You're in the dark. You know what happens in the dark? You encounter the other forces of yourself that are asking you to change. And so, yes, it is scary, but think about what that scariness, like what that scariness is pointing to. It's pointing towards what forces are inside you that are really like asking you to grow and be more, right? So there's a lot of language like that, like, the fear points to potential, what the dark wants me to be, things like that. And like if you caught this, without actually.
That's beautiful. Keep going. No, stop the disclaimer train. Stop it.
I'm just saying, like, if you found this in my notebook and didn't have that context, you'd be like, what are you trying to do? Write a Cure album?
What the darkness?
What the darkness wants me to be?
Is that a bad thing?
I guess not. And I had some like more generally speaking, like pointing to the verbs of what I do. Supporting, lifting up, letting them know that they're seen. Things like that. That like pointing to, that's what you're doing all the time. Don't forget that. But the gentle guide is not the gentle guide. And this idea of when you're ready for the change, it's gentle. But when you're not ready for the change, it's terrible, and reminding myself that like that change is something that I should walk into that darkness and embrace it, because that darkness is me, and to like ignore it or to push it away. I mean, I was just listening to the latest This Jungian Life, and they're talking about how the Titans in Greek mythology are like the unexamined sort of animalistic impulses in us, and Zeus and the Olympians are the ordering forces of the ego, and that there's a constant clash between those two forces, right? But they both matter. They're both part of Greek mythology. He doesn't just wipe out the Titans and everything's great. You can't. They're mountains, for crying out loud. Let's see. Yeah, the woods lost as part of the growth. In the shadow, the forest adventurous, things like that. So yeah, so it's a lot of like that kind of thinking about like being in the dark and acknowledging.
Can you repeat that last one?
What? The forest adventurous?
The shadow.
Oh, the shadow. Well, yeah, the Jungian idea of the shadow, right?
Uh-huh.
So the shadow is the part of. Yeah, go ahead. You know what the shadow is.
What is it again? No. What do you mean? No, I don't. The shadow is the what?
The shadow is, it's the part of you that you won't look at.
I thought you were reading one of the encouragements you wrote down.
Oh, I just wrote the shadow, and let's see what went with that. Hold on, I got it's all on sticky notes.
Oh.
Because that's my preferred method. of doing these. Well, I put the path, the forest adventurous, and the shadow, right? And that goes like, I'm also enamored of the Arthurian myth of like, they don't go where there's a path. Like that, there's something unheroic about going where there's a path, because where there's a path, somebody else made that path. You got to find your path. You go where it's darkest and where there is no path or way. And in that path is usually the questing beast or some kind of shadow creature. And that shadow creature is something that's an unexamined part of you that's asking you to change. And you got to contend with that. And that fear you're feeling is natural and it's right. And you will be terrified when you contend with it, but you're going to be so glad you did it. That was the kind of encouragement I kept going to when I was writing these words. So, but again, I know that without that context, it doesn't read like your traditional self-help book. And yeah, go ahead.
No, I think you delivered on you hinted at a sort of poetry when you wrote. You somehow knew that this is an exercise to state big things in an impressionistic way.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, yeah, you should do a little more pausing when you're reading them, because they're interesting poetry.
Well, yeah, like the one that you responded to right away was letting them know seen. What was that first one that you got excited about? Oh, what the dark wants me to be, right? And that mysterious voice in the darkness. And when I don't mean darkness is in like dark emotions. I mean darkness is in mystery. Darkness is unseen. Darkness is unexamined. It's unformed. It's the chaos that brings forth order. In all the creation myths, there's like this chaotic force, and the chaotic force is the verb, and the order is the noun, right? So I don't think of the darkness as something like Darth Vader. I think of the darkness as this mysteriousness, this thing that I don't have full contact with, but is part of me. And it's doing just as much work. It's where our dreams do their thing, right? It's like this. So anyway, that's where my encouragements all went, is that stuff. I guess I feel like a little bit not insecure. I feel vulnerable sharing it, because this is the kind of stuff that when I'm in mixed company and I get into these jags, if I'm not around the right people get weirded out. You know, like I will tell this story on an extra lean someday, but there was this moment where I was in the grocery store and I was in the vegetable section. I was standing in front of cabbages and I was listening to some audio that I won't say what it is right now, but it led me to one of those moments where I was really thinking about the kind of encouragement, these kinds of encouragements. And I started ugly crying in the grocery store, like to the point where other people in the grocery store were like, is he okay? And I tell this story to certain friends and like, oh, I know that moment. Oh, good for you. You know? And then I have other friends that tell the story too. Like, are you all right? Are you all right? Do I need to call somebody? Do you want me to come over? You know, are you okay? Like, no, it was a good, ugly crying. It was the ugly crying of transformation and realization. And, you know, and it came out of that contact with that dark place. So
That's a beautiful thing. And I hope that, well, I mean, I feel reasonably confident that this is a good place for what you shared about that story, and I know for sure Extra Lean is a totally great place for that.
Yeah,
because it's a little extra private, little extra, shared context of that thing we create, where we go a little more vulnerable than on the show. I mean, we both do our best to try to be vulnerable as two service-minded people can be, but you know, there's always the service. Anyway,
so
that's no, I appreciate you sharing that. So that's
I wonder, is there a meta way to tie this into like the practice? Like what did we experience in the practice to this? I certainly experienced like articulating thoughts that I have about my personal growth that I find challenging to talk about in like among people.
Well, it's like any kind of writing prompt. Where you go in the void is something that is that the prompt is there to sort of just to spark and to initiate, and then you carry it through, and wherever you carry it, and it's like in trusting yourself, your creative voice, the process of getting it out and all that. That's the practice. But then under the theme of encouragement, it's really I don't know if it was super hidden, but it sort of gently hides something that we deal with in the creative process as people who make things and whatnot, which is our self-talk. Like, what voices are in our head?
Yeah.
Where do they participate? What is recognized as encouragement? What's allowed? What are your habits with this stuff? And so we, opened a potentially innocent seeming door by inviting this practice that can go all kinds of different places. For me, it went more Stan Bush than I expected. And honestly, I'm okay with that, but it still feels weird to say that really, finding space for intensely positive things that make you want to jam out on a guitar is that worthwhile, or should I just get back to work and that kind of thing? It's like,
so
what am I reminding myself of here? What did I dig into and discover? And that's what I was hoping to take out of the practice. And I don't think I discovered much other than, oh no, this is deeper than I thought. And now what? Because encouragement is a great idea. We all need. So if you can give it to yourself, I think you have a better foothold to be able, as far as being able to give it to others. And I think we all need to reframe and re-engage and connect and deal with, stuff that comes to mind when you're navigating a creative process. But of course, in other parts of life too. So, it's, I'm reminded of, what was the Demons Project? Lucy Bellwood, when she did her 100
Demon Dialogues. Yeah.
Really, a cool example of, someone putting that a visualization in Lucy's story for how those voices appear to her and stuff like that. Really cool project.
Yeah.
But it reminds me of that kind of thing. How about you? Like, what do you think of this?
Well, I mean, I think it's also, it's cool that there's like at least two of us mapping these different sort of countries of what encouragement can look like, right? So like, I feel like yours was King Theoden, like getting the Riders of Rohan ready to go, murder a bunch of orcs.
Even in the movie, King Theoden is, when he's yelling, "Bring it down" about the elephant.
Yeah.
I want to pick up my guitar when he's doing it. The way he's just so metal.
He totally is. Yeah. The Riders of Rohan are pretty damn metal. And I think like going to, conversations I had with my friends, Zach Gialongo and Ben Hackey, is like this idea, like they talk every once in a while, this playful way of like what kind of D&D character you would be based on your disposition, and like they always come back and be like, I'd be some kind of cleric paladin, right? It's like I want to fight, but I want to do it in this like very like spiritual, thoughtful way. You would be straight on barbarian, who knows how to rock out, right? The barbarian who knows how to write like the poetry that gets everybody want to like crush some orc skulls. So yeah,
that's fair. I feel seen. This is fine.
But no, I think that's another part of the practice to take away is like it's a way for us to all explore like the sort of like the spot of land we're standing on when it comes to what does encouragement mean, to show that it can have more nuance and more inflection and more expression. You can't put that on an Instagram post, unfortunately, that subtlety, but it's worth exploring occasionally to reconnect with what encouragement means so that we don't get cynical about it. I think that cynicism can partially be from being overtired of the idea, but that cynicism can also be a way of protecting ourselves from actually feeling something. And I think that's what I'm grateful this time too, is that I felt like I really felt some things. They weren't always comfortable things, and they weren't things that I felt like really comfortable, like opening up my notebook in front of my other 8th grade classmates about. but it was a way to like attempt to articulate what I think encouragement looks like for me, right? Which might be helpful to share with friends, because then when I do need to pick me up, maybe they can point at those things that I know works on me. You know, it's like, anyway.
That's how interesting. That is another really useful. It's helpful to share. It's like in case of stuckness, emergency break encouragement class.
I have one friend who, like, back when we could gather in place, he would say, all I need is for somebody to put their hand on my back and rub my back and say, that sucks. I'm like, oh, I could do that, and I mean it, right? That sucks. And they're like, oh, thank you. Okay, and I've had conversations with friends where I'm like, I just need somebody to look me in the eye and listen to me and look me in the eye and say, you are not bonkers for thinking that. Okay, cool. I'm done. I feel supported, And so I think being articulate about what we need from our friends, I think in this case, when I'm stuck in a project, here's a list of responses you could give me. not that recipe-esque, but a way of thinking this is the kind of language that really works on Jerzy, like catnip, and for me it's point to the poetic darkness and I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm back in, and for Rob, it's you just need one big and then some language. Well, some what was that band? There was a Norwegian band and it was all barbarian music I used to listen to in the 90s. I can't remember their name, but
I don't know how old is Ensiferum. I mean, I'm just totally
I don't know.
Totally guessing. Yeah, I mean, my playlist is full of that stuff. So you got I mean, seriously, if you can evoke anything either visually, audibly, or spoken, where it is like the cover of Amon Amarth's album Twilight of the Thunder God, where Thor is grabbing a dragon by the tongue, right? Was it Jomungandr, right? He's grabbing Jomungandr by the tongue and he's got his hammer back and it may be his last swing. Call that out and I will get up and fight with you. We'll get stuff done. Doesn't matter. Drawings, whatever. I mean, with you together. So I'm not going to fight you.
Chris has found a perfect way to encapsulate what we're talking about here. Is the message requires some packaging design for effective delivery. That's a great way of saying it. That's so good. That's exactly right. We're saying the same thing, but the different packages appeal to us in different ways. That's why movies have different posters, albums have different covers, products have different box art. Oh my gosh. Okay. I am glad we did this.
So much. Yeah.
Can we think about what we're going to do next? So while we were talking, I was reviewing our past episodes and trying to figure out the pattern we've been following, because we seem to have discovered 4 or more buckets of like physical activity, something to do with sound, something to do with drawing, something to do with writing. And it looks like recently we were doing sound, and then before that we did stretching and doodling characters, color palettes, and drawing a line to visualize your day. What is standing out to you as far as those buckets go, Rob?
Well, one of the things we promise in the intro is things related to our business. So it's been a while. So last time we had one that just didn't go well.
Yeah.
Because we were, looking at ways to improve our presence, how we present products wherever they are, right? What if this is just jamming food for thought, right? What if we went the inspiration route instead, right? So let's say this is a little tough because this would be a practice that would build on itself in, a couple minutes at a time, where first you would need to gather, works that are related to the kind of things that you make, but it's not your works, it's works that other people make. But then you would pick things that inspire you about that thing, those things, whatever. So you could get a list of comics or a list of video games or a list of furniture, what have you. And then like once you have accumulated enough, what's enough? Like 5 to 10, 3 to 10, right? So if those examples, and then what about those examples stand out to you as the like arresting, important, worthwhile, exciting, delightful thing, like you care about it, right? So there you
So
go.
in 2 weeks, we would show up with a show.
Find it and name it.
A show and tell in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
A show and tell of things that inspire us and be able to point to one reason why. The language I use in my classroom is you got to point to one thing and say, I need evidence. I will, just because it's not an answer, you got to point at one piece of evidence that says this is why that thing is meaningful or why you feel what you feel about it.
Yep.
All right.
Boba Fett is cool. Okay, why?
Because he kills everybody.
Fine. Okay. That almost is a why. It's okay.
I'm sorry. I couldn't resist. Yeah,
no, it's good. Yeah, it's Boba Fett's a classic.
Yeah, he's cool because
beloved.
He actually
but
is.
Often just because.
Yeah. Yes, but often just because. He actually is quite cool. Just like Snake Eyes and G.I. Joe is cool. Just like name any silent and deadly character. They're always very cool. Boba Fett because helmet, yes.
Yeah, that came up in the chat. That's great.
All right. So okay, I think we've got something. I think this is a good one. So let's go ahead and in 2 weeks talk about something that is meaningful to us and inspiring to us, and that will help us collect language for potentially like part of our business pitch for ourselves. Maybe.
No, I love it. I'm just now I'm starting to think about how I'm going to go about it because part of me was like, all right, what if I found inspirational thing, then reacted, and then found it and reacted, and how would that work? How many of those practices would happen? I don't know, because I have a thing where like, what if I gather too much and then I don't react to them? So I better balance it out. That's what I was just thinking, planning ahead,
thinking tactically. All right, sounds good. Well, thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Jerzy.
And I think that means that we are at the end of this episode. So thanks to everybody who's been hanging out and chatting with us, Chris and Rachel and everybody else. And thanks to, people for downloading, watching, and listening, and the people who interact with us on the Lean Into Art Discord. We record this show weekly on Thursdays, and we stream it live all over the place. And then we collect it as a podcast at leanintoart.com. Actually, I should say we stream it live at leanintoart.com/live. That's the canonical place to go if you want to find out when it's streaming. It's embedded there. Then you can follow it on whatever trail you want if you want to watch it on YouTube or Twitch or whatever. Okay, so leanintoart.com/live. We collect it as a podcast at leanintoart.com and patreon.com/leanintoart. Until next time, I have been Jerzy Drozd of leanintoart.com and Jerzy Drozd on Instagram.
And I've been Rob Stenzinger, also of leanintoart.com, and you can find me at Instagram as Rob Stenzinger.
Okay, bye. Whoops, wrong one. This one.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.